guys were at camp this last week? How many of you guys are still tired from camp this last week? Okay. I will raise my hand with that because I'm still recovering a little bit. No baby yet, so I got to stay the whole week, which is exciting. For those of you who don't know, my wife and I are expecting our third, and so he's going to come any day now. So I might be here next week, I might not. You never know. Just kind of depends. What? The name is undecided. So, yeah, it's a very interesting name. It's kind of new agey. All right. Shh. So I have something that I want to talk to you guys about today as it pertains to this idea of movement, which if you were here last week, we started this 2-week series, and a movement is something that we talked about last week. I'll give you the definition again for that in a second. But first, I want you all to help me out, because I think that we all want to see something change in the world that we live in. How many of you look at the world we live in, you look at our what's going on the news, you look at what's going on at school, you look at what's going on sometimes in your own home. How many of you, there's just things in this life that you would like to see changed? Anybody? Like you look at that and you think, I wish I could change that, right? How many of you, it would be, you wish that no more homework on the weekends, right? Stand up if this is you. We'll do this. We'll stand up. This is a stand-up poll instead of a hand raising, because this is an emphatic, stand up if you would like no more homework on the weekends. Okay? All right, stay standing if you're like, I would like to see no homework ever. Some of you like homework. Okay, interesting. Did not see that coming. Okay, you can have a seat. How about this one? Stand up if you want more summer vacation. Everyone's like, oh, yeah. What's your favorite part about summer vacation, by the way? Sleeping, no school. Camp. Some of you said you wish you could have camp for like 2 more weeks. Okay, have a seat. All right, how about this one? Stand up if you would like cupcakes as an acceptable breakfast meal. We got muffins, but cupcakes with icing on top, which is really the only difference if we're being honest. All right. How about this one? Stand up if you'd like to see something changed about school. Okay, many of you. How about this? Sit down. Stand up if you'd like to see something changed at your home. Okay. Big or small. Could be anything. All right, how about this one? Stand up if you'd like to see something changed in our community. Like in our area, in our town, in our county, if you'd like to see something changed there. Okay? No more homeless people. That's a good one. All right, how about this one? This is the last one. This one is hopefully something everybody would stand on. How many of you would like to see something changed in the world? Just at all. Anything. Different shoes? Well, I can see why. You're wearing Crocs. Shots fired. All right. You guys can have a seat. Oh, so we've got shoes. What else would you change about the world? Everyone was a Christian. That's a noble goal. And abortion? Is that what you said? Okay. Yeah, I'm on board with that. No more government? Okay. That what isn't real? He wants to end silly protests. Okay. Say that louder. Acceptance. Like everybody's accepted. Nobody's left out. That's a good one. How many of you would like to see nobody ever left out again? That's a good one. Okay, we could go on like this for days. So let me just move on. Shh. Okay, I'll let you give one answer if you promise me one thing. No more shouting out involuntarily. Okay. Eat what? If you could yell one last time. Okay, give me your answer. No more COVID. Okay, I could be on board with that for sure. Okay, so in case you weren't here last week, we talked about the idea of what a movement is. We talked about all the things that are viral, things that are movement that everybody starts doing. In the video this morning, there was the toilet seat, like dinner tray. Has anybody seen that? They're going to start using that at your house? Okay, it's an interesting one. Okay, so a movement, let me define it for you. Okay. Focus in. A movement is a group of people working together towards a common goal. Make sense? Pretty simple. A movement is a group of people working together towards a common goal. Many of you, maybe you've heard this idea that you can change the world. And those of us that are in this room, that are adults, that are small group leaders, or myself, we look at your age group, we look at 5th graders, 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders, and we think you have the power and the potential to change the world that you live in. And we truly believe that, and that's part of why we're here volunteering to work with students your age, because we believe that you can change the world. And you can do anything if you set your minds to it. And so many of you hear that, and you're like, that gets you all pumped up. You're like, yes, I can change the world. How many of that's you? You're like, you got a passion in your heart. You feel like I could change the world. I could change the way the friendships are in my school. I could change the way that my home is like. I can change the world around me, and that gets you excited. Some of you, it's not so much that way. Maybe that's overstated in your life. Like maybe your parents say that to you, like, go change the world, honey. Or maybe you see it everywhere in like the teachers' classrooms at school. There's like the quotes everywhere about how you can change the world and setting your mind to things. And so maybe that seems like, I don't know if that's really real, It's just something people say to like make us feel excited, but really it's not exciting because I can't change the world. And maybe that's where some of you are. Maybe others of you, though, are just, if you're honest, you admit that it feels like it's too big of a responsibility. Like, I'm only in 6th grade or I'm only in 8th grade. There's really not a whole lot I could do that would change the world truly. I'm only one insignificant person, and the stuff that I do have, the world is a big place, so how far could my influence possibly go? And what can we actually do to change the world? And so if we're honest, many of us are maybe a little too scared to try. We don't know where to begin. And let me tell you a little something about myself. I'm kind of the kind of person that when I set my mind to it, I believe nothing could stop me from doing it. Actually, first what I see is all the obstacles to me accomplishing a goal. How many of you, you're this way? You think about a goal, and the first thing you think of is not how awesome it would be, but the first thing you think of is, what are all the obstacles to me accomplishing that goal? These are all the things standing in my way. If I'm honest, that's me. But once I get past that, and I analyze kind of what the obstacles are, I think, okay, I can do anything. I can accomplish this goal. Here's the obstacles, but here's how I'll fight those obstacles or jump around them or whatever I need to do or eliminate those obstacles, and I will set my mind to it, and I will accomplish this goal. That's kind of how I'm wired. But when I was a senior in high school, I had the opportunity to go on a mission trip to Mexico. I went to a Christian private school growing up, and so every year, the week before spring break, we would have missions week, and some people would stay local, do stuff around our community. Some people would go like a few hours away within the states to do something like at a camp. Or one year I went to volunteer at a special needs camp. It's called Camp Barnabas. It actually made the show Extreme Home Makeover. They went there and did a bunch of stuff to that camp. It was a Christian camp. It was super cool. And so I went there one year, and then my senior year I had the opportunity to go to Mexico. And I want to be really honest, part of this trip we had to prepare in advance to do like street ministry. We had to learn how to do performances and worship songs and stuff that we would perform in the streets as an opportunity to get people's attention and then talk to them about Jesus. And I'm going to be really honest, that terrified me a little bit. The idea of being in a foreign country where most people didn't speak my language and trying to talk to them and convince them about Jesus and the gospel and all this stuff, a little scary. And I'm going to be honest, like, as much as like I had faith that God could do something with our group when we went, because every year when a group went, they had awesome and powerful stories to tell when they came back. As much as I believed God would do something, the idea that I could do anything really kind of terrified me. It terrified me because I might say the wrong thing. because I obviously didn't speak the language, or even when I get up and speak in front of people in English, I'm terrified that I'll say the wrong thing, where somebody will misconstrue what I say, or I'll say something that's just downright heretical and wrong, And so, I'm terrified for that in my own language, let alone go and try to tell people about Jesus in a different language. It's difficult. What if they misunderstand what I'm trying to say? What if I don't say it eloquently enough? What if, and all these scenarios start playing out? And then there's the other questions like, what if, Mexico isn't like the United States? What if something gets violent? And, there's all these fears, And so I'm not going to lie, I was a little scared to go on that trip. And why am I telling you this? Because I know that many of you, the idea of changing the world is just, whether you're in the category where you think it's awesome, or you think it's overrated, or you think it's impossible, the reality is for everybody in any of those camps would say probably there's aspects of that terrifies you a little bit. And the reality is, when you're afraid to do something that you know you need to do in order to change the world around you, I want you to know you're not alone in feeling scared of that. You're not alone in feeling like maybe I'm not enough. You're not alone in feeling like maybe I'm not good enough. Because that's the reality. Maybe you don't know how to do it, or you feel like you don't know enough to be able to change the world in the way that you want. Or maybe you just aren't sure where to start. You have some ideas, but you don't know where to start. Or maybe you think you've made too many mistakes, and that disqualifies you from doing anything else good in the world. As somebody who's made lots of mistakes before in my past, I know that can be an overwhelming thought. Or maybe you think that you're the only one that cares. So what difference could you make? You're not good at convincing other people to care also. Or maybe you think, you know kind of where to begin, but then you haven't thought much past that, and you don't know what to do after you start. Or maybe we're afraid that we'll fail. How many of you've just not done something before because you'd rather not try and not do anything than to try and to fail miserably, right? It's this fear that cripples us from really actually doing a lot of things in life. And what if I told you that all this responsibility, that all this world-changing stuff, being a part of a movement that does that, what if I were to tell you that it's actually quite possible for you? And I'm going to tell you how today. Because it's something that as Christians, I think we overlook far too much. We don't quite see God's vision for our lives. We see our own lives through our own eyes. And that cripples us for all the reasons that we've just talked about. So today we're going to look at a challenge and a passage that was in the last minutes before Jesus left this earth. And if just to catch you up and give you a recap of what's happened, Jesus has come. He has come in the form of a man, and he's come to tell people the good news that he has come to share the love of the Father and give everybody a second chance. He died on the cross for that message, and he rose miraculously from the grave in order to prove that what he said was true. And so people start seeing it. He starts appearing to people after his resurrection, people who saw him die, hanging there on the cross. And he appears to them, and they suddenly realize everything he said was true. And he appears to his disciples. He appears to people on the road. He appears to 500 people at one time. And this is corroborated by several different witnesses that if this were not true, people would have proven it 2,000 years ago when it happened, and they couldn't. And so as Jesus is getting ready to go back up into heaven, as he's getting ready to give a final statement to his disciples, this is what he says in Matthew chapter 28. Matthew was one of his disciples. He records this. He says, Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands that I have given you, and be sure of this: I am with you always, even to the end of the age. He gives them this last command, his final thoughts, his last words, and we call it the Great Commission, because it's when Jesus is commissioning all of the people to do as he has done. And eventually, Jesus does go back up and he ascends into heaven, but basically he's giving this idea of kind of like, we did the game earlier about the Summer Games and the Summer Olympics that are about to start, and in track and field there's an event called relay races, right? You guys probably play it in your own schools. How many of you are in track? Like you play track at your school, or you run track, or you throw discus or shot put for track and field. The relay races is a simple concept. It's one race compiled of a team of people. And when they get to the end, this is trash bags, but pretend it's a baton. Because I didn't have a baton with me. But you, come up here, and you're just going to help me demonstrate this. So it's just like the picture. Yeah. What's your name? Owen. Everybody say, hi, Owen. Hi. All right, so when you're running a race and one person is running, face that way. When I'm done with my part, I pass the baton, and you grab it and you run, right? And then I get to stop and you get to keep going, right? Well, this metaphor, thanks. Everybody give Owen a hand. It's a simple concept. I know you get the point. But our lives, when we accept Jesus' call into our life, it's when the baton is passed to us, and we get to take that message and we get to go declare it to the world in order to bring hope. And Jesus is the passing of the baton to each of us. Jesus passed that baton in his final commission, and we get to pass that baton to others. The metaphor breaks down a little bit because we don't get to pass the baton and then stop what we're doing until we die. But our goal is, if we could have as many of these as possible, to pass these to as many people as we could, so that they could start running the race. As Paul says, the race of perseverance that is marked out for us. And so Jesus is passing the baton to us in this final great commission to us. He's calling us to go, to serve, to speak up, to share his good news, to love other people the way that he loved them, and to be a part of his movement to change the world. And let me tell you, Christianity has changed the world. It's changed the face of this planet more than any other movement in all of history. If you want to go look up the social impact that Christianity has had on the world, we talked about it a little bit recently up here, so I won't get into it a whole lot, but you can just, a simple Google search will tell you all the things that Christians have done in the last 2,000 years that has shaped and changed the world that we live in, and it continues to happen today, and it happens through you. It happens through people like you who take up the mantle, who take the baton and start running and start to serve and start to speak up and start to share their faith and start to love people the way that Jesus loved us. And it changes your community. It changes your family. It changes everything within your world because of the power of the Spirit living inside of us. And so my challenge to you this week, in order to be a part of the movement that God has called us to, would be to do something that scares you a little bit. Do something that you're scared to do. As I mentioned earlier, we all have fear that cripples us from doing things that we know we should do. So my challenge to you is to do something that you're scared to do. It's amazing to see the world around us change. And I like the way that Jesus kind of finishes that statement. He says, be sure of this, I am with you always, to the very end of the age, meaning till the end of time. And he doesn't say he's just going to be with us part of the time, or he's just going to be with us when it's easy. He says he's going to be with us all the time, always. In every difficult circumstances and in every triumph, he is going to be with us always. And so if Jesus is with us, and as we read throughout the Bible that the Spirit lives inside of us and dwells within us when we accept that call in our lives to have him be a part of our lives and live inside of us and move us and change us, his Spirit will transform us from the inside out. And when that happens, he is with us always, no matter what may come our way. And we are able to have an impact on this world that we never would have been able to have otherwise. You know, when I went to Mexico, I told you I was a little bit terrified of what that would look like and what my role could be. And I got to see things happen there that I haven't even seen since then. I got to see miracles happen. I got to see somebody who was mostly blind come up. His eyes were yellow. He talked about how he could barely see. He asked for prayer after hearing our message. And I can't take credit for it because it was just God, but there was a group of us that were high schoolers that just prayed for this guy. And we prayed in our own language. But it's weird because everybody in the circle prayed at the same time. Unless you come from a Pentecostal or charismatic background, that's weird. And we're not used to that. But we all prayed out loud at the same time. Some of us in English, some of us in Spanish. But this guy came up to us like 20 minutes later. He's like, I don't know what to tell you, but I can see better than I've ever been able to before. And the translator was translating this for us. And like I got chills all the way down my body. I get chills now thinking about it. Like that was the Spirit moving. And I don't think God does miracles just to prove how cool they are. I think he does it for a purpose. In the Gospels, when Jesus performs miracles, there's signs to prove that what he was saying is true. And I think that day that guy had a faith like he had never had before because God proved he was there in that moment. And I want to tell you that the same thing can happen to you. You can change the world. There was other great stuff that happened that had nothing to do with like miracles like that, but it was just people coming up so hungry for the gospel and hungry for the word that has changed our lives and also had the opportunity to change their lives. And it did, and it does, and it continues to this day because of the Spirit living inside each and every one of us. And if you haven't made that decision, you haven't taken that call onto your own life and taken the baton and decided, yes, I want Jesus to be my Lord and Savior. I want him to come and transform my life so I can change the world around me. Then I invite you today to make that decision as well. I'm so excited. I'm so pumped because after second service today, for those who were at camp and want to get baptized, and we were going to do it on Friday, but because it was pouring rain and it was lightning, we couldn't do it. We're doing that after second service today down there in the main service. And I'm so pumped for that. And several of you in this room have made that decision, and that's going to happen today after second service. And if you want to be a part of that, if that's a decision you want to make too, I invite you. If you can't do it today, then let's talk. Let's talk with your small group leader. Talk with me. We'll figure out a time to make that happen and get you baptized so that you can accept God's call into your life and you can take up that baton and start running the race that God has lined out for your life. If you've already done that and you're looking for maybe next steps to do something that you're scared to do, then first what I want you to do, and maybe even if you haven't made this call, this can apply to you, then I want you to first name what you're scared to do. Many of you, as I'm talking, you know there's something that you should do, but you're afraid to do it. You're afraid to do it because you're afraid you might fail. You're afraid to do it because you're not sure your faith is big enough. You're afraid to do it for whatever reason, but I want you to name what it is you're afraid to do. And that's the first step. Name what it is. Maybe it's, actually signing up to go on a mission trip or something like that, or to serve somewhere, or maybe it's loving the person in your family that's really hard to love. Or maybe it's donating part of your allowance to a really great cause in our community, or choosing to say something when somebody else is being hurt or bullied and standing up for somebody else. Maybe it's learning more about an organization or a person that's already following the call of God in their life and doing something about that and being part of that, or just praying for them. Or maybe it's serving in a ministry here at our church every single week. Whatever it is, think of something that you've maybe thought that God has laid on your heart, but you've been too afraid to take that first step. I want you to name that thing. Secondly, I want you to ask God for the courage to do it. Ask God to give you the courage to take that step. It's simple, and it's surprising how many of us fail to do even that. So ask God to give you the courage that it takes to make that next step. And lastly, I just want you to make that step. Come up with a plan. You don't have to have it all figured out, but come up with a plan to take that first step into doing something that terrifies you a little bit. The world didn't change because people just stayed comfortable. The world changed because people did something that they were uncomfortable doing. And eventually God used that to change and shape the world we live in today. Many of you are here today because the decisions that were made by people who came before you. And you get to be a part of that, not only for your generation, but for the generations after you. So, do something that you're scared to do. And as you guys talk and discuss in your small groups, I want you to think of this question. When it comes to serving, what's one thing you're scared to do? When it comes to serving, what's one thing that you're scared to do? Think about that. Talk about it a little bit within your small groups. And that's all we got for you. Make sure if you want to come and support those who have made decisions to get baptized after second service, feel free to come down to the main worship center downstairs and be a part of that, celebrate together. And if you want to make that decision, I encourage you, again, talk to your small group leader. Talk to the adults that are in this room that are here for you. And talk to me. Talk to somebody if that's something that you want to even just find out more about if you're not sure if it's a decision you want to make. We're here for you. We love you, and we want God's best for your life. Let me pray, and you guys will turn to your small groups for discussion.